Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally across Australia on the Community Radio Network. I'm really pleased to welcome back to the microphone today Peter Johnstone, the Executive Director of the Association of Independently Owned Financial Professionals. And I'm so pleased I got that out in one go, PJ, without getting it wrong.
So am I, Ray.
God, the amount of times I've struggled with that one over my tongue. But listeners, we've had Peter on the show before, and Peter is the executive director of a representative body that has, as the name suggests, financial professionals in its member association. And so, PJ, you've been involved with AOFP for quite a long time, haven't you?
25 years, yeah. I started it 25 years ago. So
yeah.
After seeing that we needed an independent voice within the industry, I had my own financial advice practice in Adelaide, and I thought, well, we need a representation from the independent side because the banks were taking over, and it was about 80-20 back then. But today, I'm pleased to say those ratios are just about reversed. So it's good.
So I think, like everything, it always takes many, many years to become an overnight success in this game. And so I must say, having 25 years of experience in the association, I feel very comfortable when I ask questions in regard to, we've got a conference that we're starting to gear up for, and by the time we go to broadcast, it will have already passed. However, I think it's very topical that we are interacting with a lot of the politicians that are now in government and people that we were talking to 24 months ago that were in opposition. And I guess from that perspective, PJ, have you seen much of a change with the new mob in town, with the new sheriff?
Yes, look, we had a very bad 10 years, unfortunately, under the previous government. They had their reasons for doing things. We thought they probably weren't reasonable, so we kind of fought them a bit, and we then spoke to the ALP, who were then in opposition, especially Stephen Jones, the minister.
Mm-hmm.
And look, they've done some good stuff for our industry. It's just that Canberra bubble. It just takes time to do things there because they kind of live in a sometimes I think they live on the moon, but anyway, they just take time to do things. There's the bureaucracy there, etc. But yeah, look, the current government has done some good things for industry. We'd hoped they would have done more by now, but there's certain reasons they couldn't go down that path, and we're happy the way they're going, and we're also equally happy that we've been speaking also to the Liberal Party in recent times, and they've kind of realised they probably went too far in the past, and they're happy to look at changes, etc. So I think the future for our industry is bright. From a political point of view, I think both sides realise they overstepped the mark and there's too much overreach within our industry, and they're now getting more comfortable to take a step back. Because one of the things we had in the Royal Commission, we had the banks get very embarrassed about their fee for no service regime they had there. They're taking money out of people's accounts, for services not rendered, etc. They got caught, they got embarrassed, and then what happened? Commissioner Hayne put in these measures, compliance measures, to stop the banks ever doing it again. But the trouble is the banks have left the industry, and what's been left behind is all these ridiculous compliance issues, which are very expensive to implement, and we and the consumers are stuck with what was put in place to curb the bank's activities. So we're trying to get rid of those, which the government realised it, but it just takes time to do things because what our problems are just on a long list of items the government's looking at. So we all get a bit frustrated that things aren't done as quick as we like, but there are other things in the world than the financial service industry, so we're just going to be patient, I think.
So I'll circle back to that in a little bit, but one of the last things talked about when you were on the show recently was the CFP accreditation, and I might just go back over that if for our new listeners on the Community Radio Network around Australia, because before we were just local with Radio Northern Beaches. But can you explain to the listeners what the CFP accreditation is all about? Because if they're talking to a financial advisor and they see these initial CFP, what does that mean?
It actually rates CFS. So there is a CFP, but there's also CFS. And what it stands for is Certified Financial Strategist. It's the designation we put together about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's about is kind of separating the best advisors from the rest. And the financial service industry is like any other industry. There's good and better and not so good operators. So CFS is about getting the best advisors in place. And we put that together based on the fact that qualifications, just because someone has a economics degree, doesn't mean they're a very good advisor. It gets down to a number of other factors in that advisor's personality, which we hone in on. And those factors are, firstly, if they're independently owned. Now, what's the use of being a highly qualified credential advisor if you're working for a bank and just selling the bank's products? Independence is important. So firstly, you've got to be independent or independently owned. In other words, they operate their own license, and they're not compelled to give advice based on someone else saying, well, this is what you got to do. Secondly, they've got to have capable research, because research is so important. And it's quite conflicted out there with the research landscape. We've got to make sure they've got competent research. They've got to have competent compliance. Because if they don't have their compliance in place, now there's a rules put in place by the government, they won't be in business much longer. So you've got to make sure they have the proper compliance in place. Yes. And the last one is also PI insurance. They've got to have adequate professional indemnity insurance, because things don't go according to plan sometimes, and therefore you've got to the investors have to have a fallback position to actually get their money back or get fees of some description if something goes wrong. Not many things go wrong these days, but they occasionally do. Therefore, you've got to have the PI insurance in place. Also, the third one is they've got to be experienced with direct shares. The ASX is just, the world's just not about funds management. So you've got to be aware of the ASX shares and also the industry fund, because the industry funds have won the day. They've been at war with the banks for the last 25 years. The industry funds are thriving and the banks are out of the industry. So you've got to make sure that advisors know about the industry funds, because there's some very good ones out there, and they've got to be aware that they put them on the table to their consumers, saying, hey, well, here's an option, and see whether you like it or not.
It is a cornerstone, I guess, when you think about it, we're talking about a superannuation industry now that is over $3 trillion, thanks to the work that was done in the 90s. And so I guess when you're thinking about the up and coming generations, where superannuation now and the superannuation guarantee, as it's climbing steadily up to 12%, this is going to be the cornerstone for people's retirements. And I guess ensuring that the CFS accreditation has that as a cornerstone foundational knowledge component, I think is absolutely important. And so I think that's a really good point to home in on with that CFS accreditation. Peter, I'd like you to comment as well. There's been a lot of amalgamation and I guess sorting out of different representative bodies in the past 6 to 9 months. What's your view on what's happening in that space?
Yes, look, Ray, the last 30 years it has been a confusing scenario for the politicians in Canberra, because the financial industry's really segregated into two major components. You've got advice and you've got product manufacturing. So you've got the people who make the products and the people who give advice on the products, and they're two separate, diametrically opposed functions. What's happened over the last 25 years, they've had a thing called vertical integration, which is virtually the banks having in-house advisors selling their own products. And that has muddied the waters, where our whole industry is a mixture of product manufacturing and advice functions, and they need to be separated. So currently at the moment, there's about 14 associations representing the financial advice industry. 14, wow. Which is just ridiculous. And the politicians look at it and say, what are you doing? Because there's all different types of, there's accounting kind of based associations, there's banking associations, there's the advice associations, all mixed into this one melting pot, and it's been totally confusing. So we think the industry should get down to, this is financial advice, it should get down to about 3 or 4 associations maximum from this 14. we're trying to keep out the, you know, I won't mention names, of course, but we all know the associations which represent the banks and the institutions. They should stay out of advice because they don't give advice, but they're trying to, you know, kind of overreach into our industry. And look, the same with the accounting associations. They're very good. They should stay with accounting. Accounting and advice are two different separate disciplines. So there has been one amalgamation of two of the larger ones in recent times, which is good. We think there should be 3 or 4 associations in the advice space. So we're trying to convince Canberra just not to listen to an association which comes to them who represent the banks, because the banks are no longer in advice, and they're the same with accountants. Accountants, you know, the accountancy discipline is different from financial advice. So yeah, so it's been a jumbled mess, but it's gradually sorting itself out, which is good.
Yeah, I guess it's a tangled web that we constantly weave, and I think if the listeners go to their favourite search engine and plug in financial advisor, they're going to get quite an array of returns, and sometimes and listeners, you need to be wary of this as well, because the financial institutions that are involved here, and given that I am one myself, when you are advertising on these search engines, the people with the deepest pockets are the ones that get placed at the top of the search. Please don't ever feel that when you go to a search engine, you're going to get an unbiased result. You're going to get a result that's very much swayed by who's got the biggest marketing budget and is prepared to ensure that their name and their company or their association is the top search result when you plug in something as synonymous as financial advisor. Peter, it's about time for a break, and we will come back. We're here on Dollars and Making Sense, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money, and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments, and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels, or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform, or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm Ray Trevisan, your host, and at the microphone today I have Peter Johnstone from the AIOFP. And Peter, I must apologise for my verbal faux pas when I incorrectly named the CFS accreditation with a different letter. It is actually CFS, not CFP. Now, we have a conference coming up that's a pretty important conference, and one that I think, Peter, in the scale of what's occurred in, say, the past 2 to 3 years, is probably right up there as one of the most important get-togethers that I'd say you and the association have put together. A, because it's in Canberra, but B, because of the people that you've organised that are actually going to come along and talk to the industry as a whole. Can you give the listeners a bit of a view of what's going to happen at this conference and who's going to be there?
Sure, Ray. Look, we see it as the most important one because we're halfway through the current parliamentary electoral term, and normally what happens halfway through, the party which is in power probably has a downward spiral with their popularity, which is what's happening now with Albo and whatever. So I think the next election is going to be very, very close. If you look at what happened at the last time, the only reason the ALP got up is they won 4 marginal previous Liberal seats in WA, which they probably won't get again because of the whole political shift over in Western Australia. So I think this election is going to be very close, and to pick a winner now, I think it's pretty impossible. So it could go either way. So what that means is the government will be quickly going into election mode very soon. I personally think the 3-year terms in Australian politics is far too short, and whereas in the US, as you know, it's 4 years, and 3 years just isn't long enough, because they're just getting into it after 18 months and suddenly saying, hell, we have an election in 18 months' time, we've got to start doing things to please the electorate. So that's what we're going to seize upon. We've got coming to a conference, we've got the Minister Stephen Jones, he's coming along. We've also got arguably probably the most powerful person within the ALP, which is the president, the former treasurer, Wayne Swan. He's the ALP national president, and he's instrumental in on policies, etc., of what the ALP put together. So he's coming along also, he's also chair of the CBUS Super, which in that industry fund space. So we're interested in his views on that, and also politically. So also from the other side, we've got the current shadow spokesperson, world treasurer, which is Angus Taylor, and he'll be coming along to give his views on where he sees the financial industry going. We're very pleased to have him there, because really, to be quite frank, the whole agenda last time was run by a certain person in a seat called Kooyong, who's now left politics, which we're glad to see, and the whole agenda was being kind of run by him, and we think the coalition, the Liberal Party, realised that perhaps they went in too hard last time on our industry for certain reasons, which I won't bore you with now. But yeah, so we see this as a very strategic conference. We'll be in Canberra. It's a parliamentary sitting week. We start on Wednesday the 29th. We finish on the Saturday morning. On the Friday night, we're having a dinner in the members' dining room in Parliament House, which is the central trough where all the pigs put their trotters into it. So
that's interesting terminology how you put it, because I'm looking forward to being at that dinner. And I was commenting to my adult children that I actually really enjoy going to Parliament House, not necessarily mingling with politicians, but I actually love the building as an edifice to our nation, but also the artworks that are there. And I think it's an absolutely magnificently built a place of hopefully governing and good democracy. But I guess one of the things that I'm always pleased to see, Peter, is that you also invite people from the Greens and also One Nation people that are influential in the space. Now, like them or hate these particular parties and these splinter groups, whatever your views may be, I think it's a broad church that we then are looking to hear from, because I think whether you like it or not, everyone's opinion, I think, is worth listening to, even if you may dismiss it. So are we seeing people from the minor parties coming along as well?
Yes, we've got a chap called John Riddick. He's from the upper house in New South Wales, but he's part of what's called the Liberal Democrats, which was the more right-wing breakaway group from the Liberal Party. He'll be coming along, and we're just currently speaking to oh God, the name escapes me. Anyway, we are speaking to one of the Greens. We've had them there in the past, but being a parliamentary.
Senator Whish-Wilson, I think it was last time.
Yes, we had last time, and he was there, and he was very, very impressive. But the trouble is, being a parliamentary sitting week, is good that we're there. They're all there, but they're all busy. So we've got to plug them in. So we got some last minute entries, and they said they'll come and speak to us just based on they can't really tell us until the week before, which is where because they don't know what they're doing with their party politics and all that type of stuff. So yes, we hope to have someone from the Greens there, and also from someone from the Liberal Democrats, and also who's the other one to interview? Anyway, we're currently just dealing with them, and we're going to try and slot them into the holes. But yeah, we like to hear all sides of the argument, and as long as we get a chance to have our say, then it's something which we value, and also we have direct access to some of the backbenchers. Some of the crossbenchers, and that's handy for blocking legislation.
I was actually going to mention, because my own member of Parliament here in my local district is a lady called Dr. Sophie Scomps, and she's one of the so-called teals.
Yep.
They don't necessarily like being referred to as a voting bloc because I don't see them that way. They don't appear that way and they don't vote that way. But I think, when you look at the credentials of people like Sophie Scomps, Zoe Daniel, Zali Stegel, and the remainder, there are 6 seats there, 6 teal seats that are a real challenge, and in the electoral landscape. I guess none of them have necessarily put a big foot forward out of that. Out of all of those, probably the one with the most financial credentials would be Zali Stegel. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've met Zali a couple of times, and she's very impressive, and she's she certainly is aware of how our industry has been probably hardly dealt by in the recent past, and she's been very good. Yep. So
I guess one of the things that we want to see, and I guess one of the questions that I'd written and sent to you in advance of, what do you see in store for the industry in 2024? And do you think things will keep on improving or stay stagnant, or do you think they'll decline?
Oh no, look. I have a very positive future of the industry, mainly because what has happened over the last 15 years has induced our industry to actually divide by half. We're currently, because we had around 30,000 in the industry, say 10 years ago, we're down to between 14 and 15. But once you crunch those figures further, just people giving advice, we're down to about 11,500 advisors. Wow. Which is good for those 11,500 advisors, because there's plenty of business out there. Because as you said before, there's a $3 trillion
superannuation,
of super and stuff, and these people need advice, and advice is critical to their financial position going forward. So just purely on those strict numbers, there's going to be a very bright future for financial advice. But what we have to do is get rid of all this regulation which is put in place by after Haynes recommendations. As I said before, it's based on curtailing the banks, but the banks have gone, right? Which is great. The banks should be in advice. They should just stay with
covered that. I guess what's of interest to me, and certainly if I get a chance to bend Minister Jones's ear during the conference, one of the things with the advice industry being halved is that the ASIC levy simply gets dished out to half the people, and so the costs double, and ASIC seem quite happy to just keep upping the ante on the fees. And ladies and gentlemen, you may not be aware, but anybody that operates in this industry and is ASIC regulated has to pay a fee to ASIC to be part of the game. And ASIC has this cost recovery model that just keeps upping the costs, and quite oblivious to the fact that pretty well all financial planners, Peter, we're small business owners, aren't we, when you think about it?
Of course we are. And this is what they've got to realise, because these costs are passed back ultimately to the advisors' clients. So the consumers are paying. And I just find it quite ridiculous that advisors are paying a police force, in other words, ASIC, to come and prosecute them. I mean, where else does that happen within society? I mean, it's just bizarre. Plus, also on top of this, if ASIC have any victories in the courts with getting money back out of the banks for that fee for no service fiasco, they got billions out of it. Didn't come back to us the advice industry. It went into general revenue, and they still charge us for it. Then they charge us for it. I mean, it's just so unfair. So that's definitely on the agenda with both sides of politics. We want that levy at the best gotten rid of, or secondly, have a independent party decide what it should be. It's
certainly moderated. I mean, this notion that they can just keep diving in and charging without any recourse. I just sit and look at that. I guess probably the other big factor that, and this has raised its head now in a number of discussions that I've had on the show, certainly in the past sort of 5 to 6 weeks, is since the discussion and consultation periods for the $3 million superannuation cap has come out, Peter, it's not so much the 3 million cap that I think has certainly alarmed me and a number of other people, but it's specifically the notion that the government's taking forward to the industry that they want to tax unrealised gains. I mean, is the association looking at that and lobbying? Because I just find this whole premise just astounding that the Labor government's going to go forward and start trying to tax us for stuff we haven't made yet. I mean, hey guys, I'm happy to pay my taxes, but I'm drawing the line at that and saying that's a bridge too far. I mean, what's your view on that one?
Oh, absolutely. How can you be taxed on something you haven't realised yet? And if they don't wake up to this, which we're going to push with Wayne Swan at our session, they're going to be out of power. They're going to be out of power because once people then realise, hey, this is setting a precedent, they can start taxing us on assets we've got which we haven't realised yet, and they may go down in future. You're going to give our tax back if suddenly you tax us on a profit which we haven't earned yet. I mean, it's just ridiculous. If they don't change that, they'll be out of power. I'm telling you right now.
I mean, the lack of basic fairness, and I mean, I've had other people from other associations that are tax specialists, and they've been in the industry as long as you, and they're just sitting there scratching their heads, going, they just don't believe that it's come forward out of what would hopefully be reasoned minds. And again, I had the chance to talk to Stephen Jones in shadow when we were down at the Hobart conference, Peter, and I found him to be a pretty reasonable kind of guy. And I tell you, if I find him in the corridors, I'm going to grab him, shake his hand and say, what the hell are you guys thinking? Because this one just defies any kind of logic. And more than anything, they've got to look at that one and say, guys, this one is a cornerstone of failure, like you've rightly said. You know, they're going to be out of power.
Oh, absolutely. They will be. Once it goes down the line, and all the kids of all these people, because the whole thing's sold on people with $3 million in super, therefore that they should pay. But the other point is that the principle is they're attacking capital gains which haven't been earned yet. Now that applies to everyone in society. So if they set this precedent, they'll try and do it again, and they've got to realise they're on a huge loser here. And otherwise they will be out of power.
They're on a hiding to nothing. That one, and I guess another bugbear I've got with stage 3 tax cuts, but we can leave that for another time. We're just about out of time. Peter, I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon when we go to the conference. Certainly, probably over the summer series, I'd like to possibly put something up on our blog about the kind of interactions that we're going to have during the conference. I'm really looking forward to it, and I must say I'm also looking forward to, I guess, walking the halls of our Parliament House. It is our building, and enjoying a bit of time there with you and the people at AIFP.
Yeah.
Peter Johnstone, thanks for being on Dollars and Making Sense.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks very much. Bye.